If you or someone you love has ever suffered from morbid obesity or just has a whole lot of weight to lose, you need to stick around because this episode is just for you. My guest today has struggled with a food obsession and morbid obesity his whole life. Having achieved a massive weight loss total of 330 pounds back in 2013, he would soon realize that his addiction to food was not yet beaten as he gained back almost 300 pounds within 6 months. Several years later, he set out on his journey again, this time armed with an enhanced understanding and a whole new mindset. There is so much more to his inspirational journey, but I'll let you hear it from the man himself. Please welcome Mike Gormy Gorman. Gormy, welcome to the show, brother. Good to see you.
Hey, man. How are you doing tonight?
I'm doing great. How you doing?
I'm good. I'm glad to be here. Glad to talk to you.
Dude, I'm pumped to have you on the show. I have followed your journey. I've read a bunch of your stuff, the blogs, and I've listened to your podcast, and I saw you on another podcast on YouTube, and that was why I reached out to you. I figured I had to have you on the JAK'ed podcast, so I'm really glad you could join me.
Awesome. I'm glad you did.
Yes, man. Indeed. Okay, so now I know a fair amount about your story, but why don't you go ahead and tell my viewers kind of what led you from where this all started to now?
Sure. Well, I've always been a really overweight kid. I grew up really, really obese. I was over 200 pounds at 10 years old.
Wow.
When I was put on diets by my family, but then I hit 350 in high school when I was 16. And graduated at a lot less than that. And after college, my weight just continued to grow. I went from the high 200s to a peak of 540 pounds. And that was my heaviest. And I was in the 500s for a fair amount of time. Like I was over 450 pounds for probably 20 years, easy.
Goodness.
Over 500 pounds probably for about 10 years. And I lost all the weight from 2012 to 2013. I got down to 210 pounds. Thought I had, made it. Thought I had hit the finish line. Thought everything was done, and screwed it up royally. I put on 270 pounds in less than 6 months. I fell hard back into the food addictions and everything in my life, and within 6 months was 480 pounds, and kind of stayed in that range for a couple of years. Basically, for lack of a better term, like I gave up on life. I just decided this was what was going to happen. Right. This was the way things were. I made a few futile attempts here or there, but never really got my crap together. And 2017 came around, February of 2017, and had some experiences with my family that brought things back into focus and made me realize that I needed to fight. I needed to actually start, thinking about what I was doing, approaching it differently, find a new way. Right. And I discovered the tool I used, to lose all the weight. For me, that was the ketogenic diet. I've been doing that for 3 years now. Right. And I've gone from 470 pounds to 205 pounds in just under 3 years.
That's amazing. That's absolutely amazing. And, it's kind of funny that, and this was one of the biggest reasons that I wanted to talk to you outside of the fact of just the inspiration of your journey in general, is that you used the keto diet and you found that, obviously, because you've been doing it for the last 3 years now, you found that to be the most sustainable way to keep your, to lose the weight and keep it off. The keto diet is just like in the last 10 years really exploded.
Oh, yeah.
And, it's like people don't realize that it's actually been around since the 1920s. It was originally designed for a treatment for childhood epilepsy by Dr. Russell Wilder. But what they're finding out now is that it's not so much the diet and the fact that you can lose weight that brought on all those health benefits. But they're finding out that it's the ketone bodies themselves. Your body, your body uses them more efficiently for fuel. Your brain uses them more efficiently. Your cognitive abilities are better. Your mental acuity is better. All these different things. And that's what they're starting to realize now that they didn't know even 10 years ago when the keto diet first started to get all hyped up. So,
and for sure. And like, I think it's like the magic of the keto diet isn't that you start eating ketogenically and the weight just disappears. Like, it's all of these other pieces that come together, and it allowed me to kind of get control of what I was doing. And it's funny because like we weren't really connected before we started talking about me coming on here. And so I've done some looking into like links you sent me and things along those lines. And like, so I found like your connection with, working on type 2 diabetes and your history, like really interesting. I was never diagnosed, but I showed the symptoms, like pretty much every symptom, and still a lot of the after effects. And my doctor believes that I probably was undiagnosed, if not borderline, if not full blown. I mean, I still have the effects of neuropathy in my feet and things like that. But I was like, if you were to sit here and do a checklist of what are the symptoms of type 2 diabetes, like I would say yes.
You probably had them all.
Yes, all of them. And I honestly think that is also one of the reasons that prevented me from getting back up to the highest weight I was before. The idea that my blood sugar was so out of control that, my weight was swinging and I was losing weight even when I was still eating massive amounts of food. There's a lot there with that like clearly was there. I mean, luckily, knock on wood now, my numbers are fantastic.
That's awesome.
But so that was a little bit of a, it was just a neat little connection to see that, like, it's good to see people talking about those things.
Yeah,
like,
indeed.
good.
I mean, in my case, it's like before my turning point, my aha moment was falling into a diabetic coma, waking up. And at that point in time, I had no clue how much I even weighed. And I wasn't as heavy as you were, but I was 405 pounds and I had no clue. And I probably had, just like you had symptoms and had been undiagnosed for a long time because I never went to the doctor. I figured, well, I'm healthy. I still get around. I work 60, 70 hours a week. I don't need to deal with this. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah.
And then everything happens. And then immediately it's like most people, at least when something like that happens, you go on a hunt. You're trying to find all the information you can so you can figure out what it is that's going on with you. And I'm sure that you realize just as well as I did that when it comes to diabetes, it's no joke. It's nothing to mess around with. I tell people all the time, it's a slow, silent killer, and that's a fact.
Oh yeah, completely.
Yep. So now, you say you still have effects like neuropathy and stuff like that in your legs and feet and whatnot. Now, at any point in time, did your doctors ever put you on any kind of diabetic medicine or anything?
Well, they did it because I'm one of those pig-headed idiots who avoided doctors for 30 years.
Okay.
Yeah, once the doctors started hardcore lecturing me about my weight when I was a teenager, and once I was in college, I pretty much, unless I was dying, I didn't see a doctor. And luckily, knock on wood, I didn't have a lot of those experiences up until I was already on this journey. I was already into a ketogenic journey. It was winter of 2017. I came down with severe pneumonia. I thought I had a cold. I thought it was getting better. I was convinced I could heal myself just by taking a couple of days off work and fluids and all that jazz. And finally realized that I could barely breathe to walk, and called my dad and said, I need to go see a doctor. And he thought I had flu symptoms, took me to see one of his friends who's a doctor. Sat in this doctor's office, terrified. It was the biggest fear of my life, was going to a doctor, because honestly, my fear was they were going to say, you're diabetic, you have high blood pressure, you have heart disease, you're going to die. I was so big for so long, and I had so many problems that I just never faced. And having realized that I wanted to fight for my life in February of that year, we're now 10 months later, and I decided I could do it. And it took me a day to get myself mentally ready. And it probably was good. I sat in that office, the doctor looked at me and he said, you're not well. Like, this isn't good. He put a pulse ox on my finger. It read 85%. When you're below 92, you're having organ damage start to happen.
Exactly.
So he said, you and your dad need to go to the hospital right now. He goes, I should call an ambulance, but I'll let your dad drive you if he promises not to stop.
Wow.
We went right to the hospital. Luckily, it was funny that a lot of coincidences that day. One of my dad's friends from the gym was actually working intake at the emergency room and kind of bumped me up a little bit, got me right in. And then I'm in this emergency room. They're ripping my clothes off. They're putting an EKG on me. They think I'm having a heart attack. They're dealing with all these issues. And the doctor came in eventually with my x-ray, and he goes, do you know what an x-ray is supposed to look like? And I'm like, yeah, chest x-ray, lungs should look black. And he held mine up, and it was 2 giant white ovals with thin black lines on top. And he said, if you had waited 2 or 3 hours, you'd be dead. He goes,
holy smokes.
he goes, we literally have you on the highest level of oxygen right now just to push enough oxygen in your body to get your blood percentage up so that you're not dying.
Right.
I spent 17 days in the hospital, and that's a whole nother adventure. And I was bedridden for a month and a half after. Was already down over 100 pounds at that point, luckily. Had a lot of discussions with doctors. Every time a new resident came on, they'd talk to me about weight loss surgery and what I was thinking about, if I was considering doing anything about my weight. So I actually kept my before pictures on my phone right by my bed, and I would just hold them up and go, this was me. This was me a couple months ago. Like, I need you to know this. I had some great experiences with the dietary people at the hospital when I first said, I eat a ketogenic diet, so I need the low carb meal. And the dietary person was like, oh, we have a diabetic meal. I'll make sure you get the diabetic meal. That next morning, the diabetic meal was brought to me, and it was oatmeal with a brown sugar packet, a blueberry muffin, orange juice, and some eggs.
Yeah.
And I was like, how many carbohydrates are in this meal? And they're like, oh, well, there's just 200 grams of carbohydrates in the meal. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to need to talk to someone else again.
Yes, exactly.
So long story short, during that time was when I finally got a doctor, and I finally started working with a doctor. And the pulmonologist who saved my life in the hospital was like, we're getting you a primary care physician. He goes, I don't care if you're not into this, we're getting you one. So found me a doctor. They obviously were running blood tests on me throughout the whole time in the hospital. They ran my A1C for the first time, everything. I had cholesterol taken for the first time. All of those things were done. The biggest result was I found out that some point in my history, they're not sure when, I had a heart attack and didn't know it. There's no physical damage to my heart, but there's electrochemical signals that tell them that you had a heart attack. So they're like, there's evidence. So then the doctor actually it was funny because the first question he asked was there any point in your life when you went to bed uncomfortable? And I was like, that was my life for 30 plus years.
Yeah,
like I was uncomfortable all the time. Like, I don't know what you're talking about, dude. Like, narrow it down for me. Tell me what kind of discomfort we're talking about. He's pretty sure that it probably happened that summer I put all the weight back on so fast because of the amount of fluid coming on and those sorts of things. But I've said long story short 17 times.
It's okay. We can talk as long as you want to talk. It's all good, brother.
Basically, when my doctor now regularly tests, my A1C, I'm on the low end of normal, like not even any threat range. But he's talked to me about, like, we've talked about like the sensation in my feet and the pain that I used to deal with when I was heavier and things along those lines, and the just the amount of urination, like everything. And he's like, you were most likely diabetic. And honestly, like I think I knew if I wasn't fully diabetic that I was borderline, and that's why I started looking into low carb diets, because I knew it could be used to control type 2. And I think that was probably one of the things that led me down that path was I knew when I started to eat low carb, those symptoms went away almost immediately. So I answer your question that you asked, I think 4 or 5 hours ago. I've never been on any medication for diabetic treatment. Like the doctors discussed, he's like, if the sensation in your feet doesn't heal and you want to try something, we can try something down the line. I'd like to avoid medication. So
and odds are that there isn't, if you're not having any problems with your A1C, then putting you on any kind of diabetic medicine is ridiculous anyway. The only thing you'd be doing is making really expensive pee. That'd be about
it. And that's and like I know he talked, there might be some medicine that would help with nerve damage, but I've done my research, and I know really the nerve damage that will heal, and the nerve damage that won't heal. Pretty much
there's some of it that when you were carrying around that much weight, there's some of it that just will not heal, and it is what it is.
And I used to have sharp burning pain every day in my feet, and like no matter what I did, it wouldn't go away. And now it's just minor lack of sensation. I can feel my feet; they're just not as sensitive as I would like them to be, I guess is a better way to put it.
Right. Well, that could be a good thing, man. I mean, because that was one of the on that particular note. I was always extremely ticklish. Like I could have never went and got a pedicure at all when I was younger. And when I was heavy, but since I've lost the weight, even though I have, and I'm pretty much off diabetic medicine now. I take a low dose of metformin as a precaution because I train really heavy in the gym, and I want to make sure that I remain insulin sensitive.
Oh yeah.
But I have some lasting effects from it as well. I mean, my feet are nowhere near as sensitive now as they were 15, 20 years ago. So, and I know that's because of, the diabetes and the times where I have let my blood sugar get out of control. So, but yeah, I mean, because that was one of the things I didn't find anywhere where it had said that you had suffered from type 2, but most people that are that far obese, it's one of the major causes. Okay, it is being obese, especially carrying a lot of visceral fat in the midsection.
Oh yeah.
It's why it is, the whole process is exactly why obesity combined with diabetes is like the perfect storm, and it's the biggest killer. Because it's responsible for so many other things. It leads to heart disease, and all these other issues. And that's what people don't get. And that's why when I decided that I wanted to get into being a nutrition and fitness coach, I named my business T2 Nutrition because I want to target people that have type 2 diabetes because it's preventable and it's curable. Not well, I won't say curable, but you'll always have type 2 diabetes, but it is 100% manageable with diet and exercise. You do not need medicine if you know what you're doing. So now let me ask you, because you said that some things happened family wise, and I don't want to get into your personal life like that, but what were the things that happened after you gained the weight back? What were the triggers that changed your mindset?
That changed my mindset to be able to lose it again, or that brought me back?
And to be, because obviously, yes, you lost all that weight before, but the mindset wasn't there because you were able to lose focus. You know what I'm saying? Whereas, now it's like the mindset is solid. You've got your destination in sight, and you're hard pressing towards it. So I'm just trying to figure out what it was that actually changed in your mindset, because I think mindset is one of the biggest things when it comes to people transforming themselves.
I think so, and I agree 100%. And what I think really happened was that that journey, that leg of the journey, for lack of a better term, my motivation to lose weight at that point was I was out of work, and when you're 540 pounds, no one wants to hire you, no matter what. Especially my jobs had all been in professional office settings. When I just walking in from the parking lot to go for the interview, I look like I need medical help. Like, who's going to hire me? And like, I kind of got into that headspace, and I was like, I knew my family was worried, and I knew other people were worried. So I made the decision to lose weight, and I started chasing numbers. Like, for me, it was about losing the weight. I had made a decision. I wanted to see 210 by my 40th birthday, and I did. And the thing I didn't do was think at all about what came into this. Why was I the way I was? What was going on identity wise for me? Like, I had really built an identity around being the happy fat guy, about being the guy that was the joyful glutton, that, nothing could faze me. And I was never ashamed of my size. Like, if you go to my Instagram account, you can see I have a lot of wacky before pictures that I used to post on Instagram, because I had no shame. It was kind of like more like thumbing in the face of people that would get mad at someone being happy for being big. And so I lost all the weight and had no idea who I was and how to approach life or any of those things. It had no real plan in place, and gained all the weight back. And the big change with my family was that I finally realized that I had a reason to live. Like, I don't mind talking about it. Like, my parents came into custody of 2 small children, and my dad one night told me that he was going to need my help because he knew he wasn't going to live long enough to see them graduate college.
Okay.
So it wasn't him trying to say, and here you are, 500 pounds, and I need you to do something about it. Like, that was not at all the intent of the discussion. It was him having for himself to say out loud that he knows he might not live 20 years, 30 years, whatever, however much time it is.
Right.
And I went home that night, and I was like, he's not kidding. He really needs me. And it's dumb. Like, I feel stupid now, but I really realized at that point that my life wasn't just about me. I had lived selfishly for over 40 years. Like I had really
Mhm.
lived just to feed my own pleasures and do what I wanted to do, and never really thought about the interconnectedness of our lives and how it impacts, you know, how it impacts the village, for
Right.
lack of a better expression. And
Mhm.
I so I think sometimes people misinterpret me and think that I'm saying that I lost weight for other people again, and it wasn't. What I finally realized was that there was more purpose to my life than how much food I could get into my body.
Right.
There was a bigger purpose there,
Right.
and I had to want to live out that purpose. I had to finally want to live, and I had realized that I didn't. Like I used to keep a letter by my bed that was a note from my family in case I didn't wake up. It was
Wow.
basically saying, and it was this stupid piece of crap that I burned eventually. I
Mhm.
wish I'd saved it, but I burned it because I needed it gone from the world.
Right.
And it basically was saying, don't be upset. I lived a happy life. Like basically trying to absolve them of any guilt for
Mhm.
what I chose to do.
Yeah.
And so my why really came into focus. I realized that I needed to do something. I needed to try again. I needed to fight. And I knew I needed new weapons. And I didn't just need a diet. I didn't just need a meal plan that would help me because I'm great at losing weight and gaining weight. Like I'm
Right.
fantastic. That's
You're one of
easy.
the better people from what I can
Right.
tell.
Like, I've lost over 150 pounds more times than most people, get to 150
Mhm.
pounds probably. And I realized that the missing piece the last time was that I was not at all thinking about where was my head at throughout that journey. Like what was important for me mindset wise? What were the issues
Mhm.
I was dealing with? Where at any point do I need help and support? Like how does that all come into play? Like what is my life about? Who am I? What is my identity when I'm not 500 pounds? Like
Right.
when I don't have the funny fat guy act to fall back on, who am I? What does that mean?
Mhm.
And then also be honest about what my relationship with food had done to my life, what choices I had made, like face the consequences of a
Mhm.
lot of things that I had done. Like I know when you go into like a 12-step program, like for alcoholism, like they talk a lot about, reparations and, you know, things along those lines where you have to think about how did your choices, did your drinking choices impact other people? And I had to
Definitely.
face how my eating choices had affected other people, how I
Sure.
chose food over my family, I chose food over my friends, like,
Mhm.
and I had to start thinking about there being more and actually start thinking about the future, which is something I would always avoid because I didn't think I was going to live. So why worry about the future?
Yep.
So I had to start thinking a little bit more about where was my life headed and what did I want that to look like, and ask all those big questions that most people are asking their whole lives and I just avoided because I ate.
Mhm.
I also, so really my mindset was I had a mindset like I didn't the last time. Like
Yeah.
it sounds weird, but like I lost over 300 pounds without ever giving a thought to what it meant for me mentally and what it meant for me emotionally and what it meant for me as an individual. Like it was more about the scale. And
Right.
this time around, I knew even when I hit points of stalls or things along those lines that I had to be thinking about how am I working on what my relationship with food is like? How am I working on what my relationships with other people are like? How are my like I never identified as an emotional eater. Like I would always say, people would ask me, "Are you an emotional eater?" And I even the first like year or two of my journey, like I said, no, I didn't eat when I had emotions. And what I came to the realization of, like I had this one night, like I kind of stayed awake all night thinking about this. Like I was an emotional eater, but I ate all the time. Like I
Yeah.
was numb constantly. I was
Mhm.
constantly emotionally numb.
Right.
So now, and the thing that brought that realization on was I get irrationally angry and I get irrationally happy and irrationally sad, and not like in a manic way, but
Right.
in a human emotion way that I had buried before. So
Mhm.
as an adult, I'm learning things that I think adolescents learn about how we handle our emotions and how we stand up for ourselves and all of those things, like
Right.
things that I had avoided and pushed down and buried in food. And
Mhm.
now I'm able to explore them more. And I'm not opposed to saying I need help when I need to deal with things like that. And
Yeah.
it's become something that's really been kind of a hallmark of my journey for me, is just really the fact that no matter what I'm doing, I am thinking about. So even like even to go into like, a little bit of my relationship with food, like now I think about not just how does food affect me physically, but what are my emotional connections to different foods? And
Mhm.
are there some foods that, because that emotional force is still so strong, that even if I, in theory, could eat them and physically be fine and not have cravings or anything along those lines, I know they wake up the dragon that's inside of me. I know that it's like you were saying, you know, type 2 diabetes can be managed. I feel like the side of me that got to 500 pounds is never going to go away.
Right.
He just is managed
Mm-hmm.
and, you know,
Exactly.
is sedated in a
Mm-hmm.
lot of
Yeah.
ways. And
Yep.
I, I think now more about like what that why doesn't change for me. Like it's still about wanting to live. Like I
Mm-hmm.
went from barely surviving to feeling like I'm living life, and I'm trying to figure out what thriving means now. So
Yeah.
it's something that I realized that there's no finish line, there's no end point. That was another
No.
big thing. Like I used to see diets as a timer with an
Yep.
expiration date, and I had to eventually realize that even if I hit my goal weight, which I did, and I'm now kind of working in that maintenance place, I had
Right.
to have I still had to have clearly defined goals, because when you're someone that has been massively obese and has had those issues, you need those big things to focus on, because if not, it's very easy to fall back into the old patterns and the old habits. Like
Yes, it is.
you can't just focus on I made it. You have to focus on what's coming next, and you have to
Mm-hmm.
think about what are you doing to do that. So like for me, the challenge of this year is figuring out maintenance and finding my way through those waters that I've never been successful at before. Like for
Right.
some people it's not a challenge, and for me it's probably the bigger challenge than losing 300 pounds is going to
Mm.
be figuring out how to live my life, not as a person losing weight, not as a person gaining weight, not as a severely overweight person, but as someone, you know, in the quote unquote normal space. And what does that mean? And how do I even want that to mean? What do I even want that to mean?
Right. Right. And let me go back and touch on a couple of things that you said
Hmm.
there. First and foremost is, like you said, you found your why,
Hmm.
and your why is still. It sounds to me like it's still evolving. You
Hmm.
have a core why, but then there are like satellite issues
Oh
around
yeah.
it, and I think that is good, because that means that your why is evolving as you evolve,
Hmm.
and that is a mark of success there. So as far as you being able to find your way into, the maintenance aspect of your journey, I see you doing that without issue. I really do. Um, but like you were talking about relationships with food and stuff like that, and
Hmm.
emotional eating, you know, as a nutrition coach, so many of my clients, they get frustrated with me because when they first start working with me, the very first thing I do is give them 9 pages of homework,
Mm.
because I want to know everything. I mean, I want to know, does their family support their efforts? And if they do, how
Mm.
much? I want to know, what their stress levels like at work, what their stress levels like at home.
Mm.
They're literally probably between these 9 pages, there are probably 6 of them that are all about the mindset,
Hmm.
because that's going to tell me more than just, well, I gained 50 pounds in the last 2 years, and I had a kid 2 years ago, so I think it's
Mm.
all connected to just having a kid, and I'm not able to be as active and all these different things. There are so many aspects of your life that will affect
Hmm.
your health, your weight, the way you eat, everything. And people don't realize it. They don't realize it at all. And as a coach, I feel it's my job to not, it's not my job to hand you a diet plan. It's
Hmm.
not my job to hand you a workout plan. It's my job to give you tools, is to educate you and say, hey, did you ever stop to think that when you have a bad day at work, you come home and you eat emotionally? you
Hmm.
know did you ever stop to think that maybe you need to have a discussion with your significant other, because they're not really supporting you all that well in your journey, so they're bringing foods into the house that tempt you and things of that nature?
Hmm.
So much of that stuff is connected, but people don't get it. They have this mindset of, all I need to do is find the best diet out there and the best workout plan, and I'm going to lose weight. And that may work for a little while, and it
Hmm.
may work for some people, but it's not going to work for everybody. You know?
Oh yeah.
So now let me ask you, keto has been the biggest driving force, from what I understand, in the second leg of your journey, so to speak.
Hmm.
What is it that you think is making it so easy for you to sustain your lifestyle on keto versus anything that you've done before to lose weight? And if you could touch a little bit on what you did the first time around to lose weight.
Sure. Well, I've tried many diets throughout my life. I've been a Weight Watchers many times. I've done, I used to, betraying my age, I was big into Deal a Meal by Richard Simmons.
Oh yeah.
You know, I had my wallet with my cards in it. There was a diet, an old diet called the Carb Addicts diet, where it was put out by 2 doctors and had a reward meal. And I loved that reward meal, which eventually became 2 reward meals and eventually became, okay, reward every day. And when I lost weight, that first big time, that first 300-pound loss, it was paleo. It was a paleo approach to eating.
Okay.
I was probably lower carb paleo, but I was not ketogenic in terms of like fat ratio and even carb counts. I was avoiding, that was just when 2010, 2011, like around that time, 2011, 12, that was when people were finally starting to say with paleo, well, potatoes are plants, so why don't we eat potatoes? So a lot of paleo people were starting to eat a lot of potatoes, and I was not one of those people. I was a little wary at that point because I knew how potatoes made me feel. And so I was always kind of like had a little success with low carbish plans, and that was the kind of thing. So when I discovered that I had heard the K word around for a while when I was losing at that time, but it was more fringy in 2012, 2013. It was kind of like crazy people aren't eating carbs. Okay. And so for me though, I kind of kept on top of research. I kept on top of things and decided keto was the tool and that I was going to try. And I did. And one of the things the biggest thing I think that I've gotten out of eating ketogenically is I found the strength to be able to feel mentally free from the control that food had on me. Even when I was paleo, I still had constant cravings. I still wanted those other foods. Like I still wanted them all the time. And it was just, I white knuckled my way through. And that's, what led to that big collapse in a lot of ways. And now I think by eating ketogenically, I've been able to control the physical cravings in my body that carbohydrates used to drive. And I was able to then start to work on identifying what is physical hunger and what is mental hunger. What are the mind games that your mind is playing on you? And when are times when your body is hungry and just really needs food? Like, okay, sometimes it's not about like I even had points in my journey where I would say, I don't understand why I'm craving so much food. And the coach I was working with at that time was like, well, what have you eaten so far today? And I told him, and he's like, that doesn't add up. Did you eat enough food today? Like, are you just hungry? Like, have some eggs, calm down, have some eggs and see what happens. And so what it really has given me, like, especially this past year and a half, is a sense of freedom when it comes to interacting with food. Like, I've been able to realize that I don't look at food as a demon anymore. I don't see food itself as evil. I see what I was doing with food as wrong and what I was choosing to do with food. Like, I see people every day who are perfectly healthy, who have a relationship with food that is way different than mine and can do things, can have that 2 bites of cake and move on to their salad for lunch or whatever they do, or, can drink 2 glasses of wine on a Friday night, but then not order a pizza when they get home, those sorts of things. And eating ketogenically has given me the ability to gain a better control over the food that I eat because I don't have the physical cravings as much. The mental cravings still come and go. Like, let's be 100% honest. Like, there's no way that I'll ever completely go away. But I think what's happened is I now am able to recognize when I've got a mind game going on and I'm like, okay, you're just really stressed out about work and that's why you want ice cream, or you're really stressed out about X, Y, and Z and that's why you want this. And this diet, this way of life really has given me the ability to move into that space and to feel more comfortable around food and not like, I do a podcast myself and I just did a Q&A episode. And one of the questions someone asked was how I avoid temptation. And I realized that, like, if I were to be 100% honest right now, I don't see temptation as a part of my life, because it doesn't mean that I don't want foods, but I don't look at a food anymore as it's looking back at me seductively. Like, I realize if I want to, I could eat any food. Like, I could sit here as an adult and eat any food, but I can choose not to eat foods because of how they make me feel and the consequences I have to deal with. And Does that mean at some point in the future I might choose to eat something that has consequences? Of course, I probably will. You know, there will be times where things happen,
Right.
and choices are made. But I've framed it all now as choice, not as cheating, and not as tempting, and not as any of those things. And like,
Yep.
I honestly, like, I don't think I felt the strength to be able to do that and eating any other way, eating other plan,
Yeah.
like any, like, especially like, I think about when I did Weight Watchers, because I've done Weight Watchers as an adult, and
Mm-hmm.
I was the king of figuring out how to fit foods into my points. You
Yep.
know, is I so like
Mm-hmm.
that's why, like, I've had people say to me like, well, why don't you do if it fits your macros? I'm like, because you have no idea what I would fit into my macros.
Absolutely.
I would eat 3 Reese's cup and a chicken breast, and that would be my food for the day. Like, I would,
Mm-hmm.
and then how would I feel and what kind of cravings would I have and all that
Yep.
jazz. But I would be that person that was trying to figure out like, even when I first started keto, I was, I count total carbs now, but I used to count net carbs.
Right.
And I would do everything I could to be like, let me find something that has 30 or 40 grams of fiber in it that I can subtract so I can eat as much of it as possible. Like,
Right.
like figuring that out, like, I think now it's given me that sense real of control. And then, I mean, let's just be 100% honest. Like, by following this way of eating, I have my health back. I have my life back.
Mm-hmm.
I have no problems with my blood sugar. I have no problems with my heart. I have no
Right.
problems with any of those issues. Like, the only medical issue I could possibly have right now is testosterone level,
Right.
free testosterone, and that the doctor, he attributes that more to the fact that I was massively obese from the time I was 10 years
Mm-hmm.
old. And so I went through development with my hormones all out of whack.
Right.
And we're looking at, will the maintenance period of my weight loss end up having the stabilizing effect on that he thinks might happen, or do we need to
Mm-hmm.
pursue something else? But I wake up every day, not, I I used to, and like when I was when I was heavier, when I was 470 pounds before I started keto, I was going to the bathroom every 30 to 40 minutes, even when I went to sleep.
Right.
I was getting up in the middle of the night
Mm-hmm.
5 or 6 times to go to the bathroom, and I was thirsty all the time. All
Oh
this.
yes.
Like,
I'm very
there's no,
familiar.
there's really no need for me to go down that list of symptoms, but I,
Right.
I my face was red all the time, like,
Mm-hmm.
beet red all the time. Like,
Right.
I got out of breath so easy. I could barely walk to my car. When I got home every day from work, I had to rest walking up the stairs to get into my apartment. So now I can
Mm-hmm.
run up the stairs, and now I can go to the gym 5 days a week. And that's what this has given me. So even if there is a way I could have gotten that through another way of eating, I didn't.
Yeah.
I didn't find that, that wasn't
And to
something
be
that
quite
really
honest,
happened.
odds are it probably wouldn't have been sustainable for you. Okay. Now
Right.
let me go back and touch on a couple of
Yep.
things that you talked about. Most people don't realize. Okay, first and foremost, carbs are not evil.
Mhm.
Okay, and anybody that's watching this podcast, I am clearly stating that carbs are not evil in any way, shape, or form.
Mhm.
There are some people. They're type 2 diabetics. Some of them aren't even diabetic. Their bodies just don't deal with
Mhm.
carbohydrates very well. But here's the problem with carbohydrates that you don't have with any other macronutrient. Okay. If you eat too much fat, more than likely you're going to get rid of that when you're sitting in the bathroom.
Oh yeah.
Protein, you're also going to get rid of in the bathroom if you eat too much of it. People think that when they're on the ketogenic diet, that if they eat too much protein, it'll kick them out of ketosis
Mm.
because they hear about the process that's known as gluconeogenesis. But here's the thing, that process does exist. It takes amino acids from protein, turns it into
Mhm.
glucose, but it's a demand driven
Right.
process and it's basically designed for the brain.
Mhm.
It's not designed to flood your body with blood sugar. Okay.
Mhm.
So, but what people don't realize, the worst part about carbs is just eating too much of them.
Mhm.
When you eat too many carbs, when you eat more carbs than your cells need to absorb or that you need to burn for energy at a specific point in time, your insulin receptors say, okay, we've got all this blood sugar, but all the cells are full and we're sitting on our ass. So what are we going to do with it? So then the body transfers it to the liver, where the liver puts it through lipogenesis and turns it into fat. And
Mhm.
it's like, let's just put some of this fat over here and save it for later. Some of this over here and save it for later. And
Mhm.
that's where eating carbs can make you fat. If you eat too many of them and you're not exercising properly, I don't care who you are, you're going to pick up body fat,
Mhm. Mhm.
plain and simple. But I think the biggest thing, touching on the last point that I wanted to about you saying that you don't feel like you want to overeat, you don't feel hungry. With the ketogenic diet, that's because of the protein in the fat.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. The proteins in the fat have an effect on the hormones that actually control your hunger. Mm-hmm. So it winds up keeping you to the point where you feel fuller longer, so you're not hungry. Like I correct me if I'm wrong, I've seen some stuff on your Instagram where you may have been or may be now dabbling in carnivore.
Yeah, where I did carnivore February. That's
did you? Yeah, me too.
Thank goodness it's almost over, is all I'm gonna say.
It didn't sit well with you?
That's a whole nother can of worms, I think. I went strict carnivore, so I eliminated dairy completely.
Okay.
And also anything I was taking that had sweeteners like stevia or anything in them. So like pre-workout, electrolytes, things along those lines. Like I supplement electrolytes in other ways.
Right.
But I've started now having really intense cravings for foods like avocado or greens, cheese, and to the point that it's I'm dreaming about food almost every night, emotionally dreaming. Like, so I think for me, I'm one of those people that in the end, it's the thing that carnivore has helped me with is with mindful, intuitive eating, like being able to deal with satiation, things along those lines. But it's starting to have a negative psychological effect on me, if that makes any sense. Like
it does.
It's starting to get overwhelming. Like if it was so negative that it was actually overwhelming, I would stop. I wouldn't continue. I wouldn't finish the challenge. Okay. But I haven't had cravings this intense for foods in over a year. So, and I don't know, like, I know that it's mind games and things along those lines, but I know it also, like, I'm not dreaming about Reese's cups and chocolate chip cookies. Like,
right. You're dreaming about avocados and almonds and stuff like that.
Like I'm dreaming about having, I had a dream the other night that I ate half of an avocado, and someone I know online was chasing me, yelling at me for eating half an avocado. Like, so I'm dreaming about, I'm having intense cravings for foods that I know my body responds okay to, things that, and also like, I don't want this to become like the carnivore, full on carnivore discussion.
Oh no, not at all.
Like, I think, what I've also realized is because my carb level was around 20 total grams of carbs before I went carnivore. So I was very low to begin with, in that 10 to 20 range. I don't honestly feel any physical differences or any mental focus differences for me at all. I feel exactly the same. So, and I know some people have said to me, well, that's only because you're only doing 1 month, and give it 2 months. And I'm like, the downside I'm feeling isn't worth it to me. So,
no. And that's not true.
I love people that thrive, but for me, I think at the end of the day, like I'm one of those people that needs a little more variety.
I would say that statement that somebody told you isn't true. If you were not keto and you went carnivore, then yes, give it 2 or 3 months.
Right.
But if you're transitioning from keto to carnivore, it's not that big a leap. Right. I like you. I'm a member of a Facebook group, and they were doing carnivore for the month of February. And for me, it wasn't that big of a leap, because outside of eating meat and like eggs and cheese, about the only, I don't eat a lot of vegetable sources. I do eat avocado. I eat dill pickles to help keep the sodium up and potassium and whatnot. I eat almonds and macadamia nuts, but that's about it for any of my plant sources. So for me to go carnivore, it wasn't a big deal at all. And the only thing that I noticed was that I was even more satiated than I was on keto. I mean, I would literally, because I spend 20 hours a day in my office working or at the gym with a client or something like that. And I had literally had to set an alarm on my phone to say, hey, dumbass, eat. Because I'd go an entire day and be like, oh, hell, now I got to get another 1,800 calories in before I go to bed, and that's not good. Not that your body can't necessarily handle it, but you feel all bloated and everything else. And it's just not a good situation. So, yeah, I mean, I look at it like this. I really don't care if you're carnivore, keto, paleo, Whole30, the damn snake diet. I could care what you're on. If it's working for you and you are healthy and you can sustain it,
right,
then good on you. Plain and simple. Okay, I think I pretty much touched on everything that I wanted to touch on with you. But I do have one question that I ask anybody that comes on a podcast with me.
Sure.
And normally I give people heads up, but I didn't tell you this time because I figured with the journey that you've been through, you got a pretty good answer to this one.
Mm-hmm.
If you could affect one thing about health and fitness on a global level, meaning you could make a change or get a message out there that would affect people on a global level, what would it be?
Wow. That's a really good question. And I think the cheesy answer is I would love to see every person on the planet eat a ketogenic diet. I would love it. I firmly believe there's a benefit for every person. Now, I don't think it's sustainable for every person. I don't think it's realistic.
Right.
I don't think every person can, because we're all, people are human. But if let's put this way. I would really change the FDA dietary suggestions to reflect a ketogenic diet. I would change that. I know that they're arbitrary to begin with, but I think we've built so much of our culture around 8 servings of grains and the food pyramid as it's defined. I would change it and then campaign so that everyone knows that I would change it in every textbook in every school across the country. I would make it. I'd go to the UN and make it a rule. I think as much as people don't necessarily follow dietary guidelines per se, I do think it's become such an ingrained part of our culture, like that you have to eat 8 servings of grains and 6 servings of vegetables and fruit every day. And we're still as a culture phobic of meat and fat, and that's clear that we are. Like, it's clear, just the sheer number of people. Like, I know it's funny because I feel like Instagram is a really great supportive community in general for weight loss. I have a lot of friends on Instagram that I've connected to that are really close, that are vegan, and we respect each other and we talk all the time. I know as soon as I post on Twitter and use the hashtag keto or low carb high fat, I'm going to get attacked. I'm going to be immediately under attack. And I think so I would love to see that change happen, because I think then it would propagate. It would become. I have so many, and this is something like I struggle with. I have so many close friends that have type 2 diabetes and see their nutritionist, and at the nutritionist they're told they're not eating enough cake and they should try to have ice cream, and why aren't they eating bread? And I'm literally saying, okay, so what else happened at that appointment? They're like, well, they upped this medicine and they upped that medicine. And I'm like, why is your doctor telling you to have a treat? And they tell them to have treats because they say life isn't sustainable without them. Literally, this is what a quote unquote medical professional is telling someone who is probably going to eventually deal with amputation and things along those lines. It's funny because I say to him, I'm like, do you want me to rant or do you not want me to rant? When you're telling me this, what do you want? Because he talks about his medications, and I say, you do understand that those medications do not heal you. Those medications slow the progression. Exactly. They manage your systems, but that disease is still progressing.
Right.
And I think when it comes to dietary guidelines, not just in general, but even if it were just to be small and just be dietary guidelines suggested for people that have type 2 diabetes, I would love to see that happen. I would also throw in there that I would like to see full sugar soda removed from the face of the planet. I'll throw that in as a bonus. I would love to see soda gone. I would love to see it gone.
I would too. When I was heavy, I drank Mountain Dew by the gallon, and it was one of the worst things I could have drank. But I got to say that your answer to that question was extremely powerful, and it's so head on. Everything I can remember in the 70s, because I think I'm a little older than you. I can remember in the 70s being in school and sitting in classes, health classes, and they were talking about the food pyramid and all that stuff. And the idea of having to eat the way they wanted you to eat back then and everybody was based on a 2,000 calorie a day diet. That's horseshit, man. That is absolute horseshit. 2,000 calories barely gets me out of bed.
Right.
But I'm 6'2", 265 pounds, and I've got a lot of muscle on me. You know, everybody is different. And this thing of lumping everybody together saying, this is what you're supposed to do. No. Keto works for you. Keto works for me. Keto works for a lot of people that I know. Does that mean that everybody in the world should do keto? No, because just like you said, there are some people it just doesn't work for.
Right.
You know, there are some people that have metabolic conditions where they can't, they have problems digesting a lot of fats, even though they're healthy fats. They have issues with that. You have people that have things like celiac disease where they can't have any kind of gluten or anything. There are so many different metabolic conditions out there that people are dealing with. And to be quite honest with you, I think a lot of them, like stuff that you didn't hear about 20 years ago, comes from the way we eat and the preservatives and all the crap and the stuff that gets put in food these days. So, I mean, that's where I'm at with it. And I'm right along with you, man. I mean, I think you and I should band together and just wipe out soda, kick type 2 diabetes in the ass, and just do what we can to obliterate obesity worldwide. I think that's what we should do.
Sounds good to me, man. Sounds good.
All right. Well, Gormy, I sure am glad you were able to take time to hop on the show with me. And this has been a super conversation. And anytime you want to come back on the show, you got something on your mind, you just reach out to me, brother.
Sounds good, man.
Hey, if you want me to come on your podcast, by all means, say the word.
I know, right? I should have you do that. So we'll definitely,
absolutely.
We'll set that up.
Like I say, I wasn't as heavy as you were, but I was kind of getting there.
Oh yeah, man. Oh yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, brother. Well, you take care, and we'll see you again. Guys, I hope you got a lot of value out of this episode. If you did, make sure that you hit the subscribe button. Be sure to like it. Be sure to share it. Hit that bell so you get notified when we do new podcasts. So until I see you guys again, playtime's over. Get your asses to work.